The Egyptian Air Force is the aviation branch of the Egyptian Armed Forces, is responsible for all airborne defense missions and operates all military aircraft, including those used in support of the Egyptian Army, Egyptian Navy and the Egyptian Air Defense Forces, created as a separate command in the 1970s. Coordinates with the Air Force to integrate air and ground-based air defense operations. The EAF is headed by an Air Marshal. Currently, the commander of the Egyptian Air Force is Air Marshal Younes Hamed. The force's motto is "Higher and Higher for the Sake of Glory." The Egyptian Army Air Service was formed in 1932, and became an independent air force in 1937. It had little involvement in the Second World War. From 1948 to 1973 it took part, with generally mediocre results, in 4 separate wars with Israel, as well as the quasi-War of Attrition. It also supported the Egyptian army during the North Yemen Civil War and the Libyan Egyptian War of 1977. From 1977 to 2011 it saw virtually no combat, but has participated in numerous exercises, including Operation Bright Star. Since 1992 the EAF has also provided aviation support for the police and other national security organizations engaged in the war against terrorism. In recent years the Air Force has acted in the Sinai Insurgency, the Second Libyan Civil War and the intervention in the Yemen. The EAF primary role is the air defense of the nation, with secondary tasks of strike and army support operations. The EAF provides official government transport and carries out international search and rescue operations in the desert, the Mediterranean Sea, and the Red Sea. In 2014, the IISS estimated the total active manpower of the Egyptian Air Force at approximately 30,000 personnel, including 10,000 conscripts, with reserves of 20,000 personnel. This contrasts with an estimate of some 35,000 personnel, with most aircrew being long-term professionals, in 2010. History. Establishment. In late 1928, the Parliament of Egypt proposed the creation of an Egyptian Air Force. The Egyptian Ministry of War announced that it needed volunteers for the new arm to become the first 4 Egyptian military pilots. Over 200 Egyptian officers volunteered, but in the end only 3 succeeded in passing strict medical tests and technical examinations. These 3 went to Number 4 Flying Training School RAF at RAF Station Abu Su'ir near the Suez Canal, where they were trained on a variety of aircraft. After graduation, they traveled to the United Kingdom for specialized training. On the 2nd of November 1930, the King of Egypt and Sudan, Fuad I, announced the creation of the Egyptian Army Air Force. On the 27th of May 1931, the Egyptian Council of Ministers approved the purchase of 5 aircraft and the building of an airfield at Al Mazrah with a budget of £50,000. The aircraft chosen was the British de Havilland Gypsy Moth trainer. The 5 modified aircraft were flown from England to Egypt, and on arrival in May 1932 the Air Force was founded and the Al Mazrah airfield was formally opened. The first commander of the EAF was Squadron Leader Victor Hubert Tate Rath, a Canadian, former senior air advisor on the British military mission in Egypt. Tate selected staff, weapons and initiated building a number of airfields. In 1934 the British government provided 10 Avra 626 aircraft, which were the first real Egyptian military planes. A further 17 626s together with Hawker Audaxes for Army cooperation and close support and Avro Unsons for VIP work followed shortly afterward. In 1937 the Egyptian Army Air Force was separated from the Army Command and became an independent branch named the Royal Egyptian Air Force. New stations were built in the Suez Canal Zone and the Western Desert. During 1938 the RAF received 2 squadrons of Gloster Gladiator biplane fighters and a squadron of then-modern Westland Lysander reconnaissance aircraft. Egypt was the last state to use the Lysander in action during the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. Second World War, as the Egyptian border was threatened by an Italian and German invasion during the Second World War. The Royal Air Force established more airfield in Egypt. The Royal Egyptian Air Force was sometimes treated as a part of the Royal Air Force. At other times a strict policy of neutrality was followed, as Egypt maintained its official neutrality until very late in the war. As a result, few additional aircraft were supplied by Britain. However, the armed did receive its first modern fighters, Hawker Hurricanes, and a small number of Curtiss P-40 Tomahawks. In the immediate post-war period, cheap war surplus aircraft, including a large number of Supermarine Spitfire Mk.IXs, were acquired. A roughly 1946 order of battle for the Air Force can be found in Jane's fighting aircraft of World War II. 1948 Arab-Israeli War. Following the British withdrawal from the British Protectorate of Palestine and the establishment of the State of Israel on 14 May 1948, Egyptian forces crossed into Palestine as part of a wider Arab League military coalition in support of the Palestinians against the Israelis. The Egyptian Air Force contribution included the short Sterling bomber, Douglas C-47 Dakotas performing as light bombers, and Spitfires. 2 Israeli aircraft were shot down, and on the 22nd of May 1948, Egyptian Spitfires attacked the Raf Ramat David airfield, believing that it had already been taken over by Israeli forces. The first raid surprised the British, and resulted in the destruction of several RAF aircraft on the ground, and the deaths of 4 airmen. The British were uncertain whether the attacking Spitfires had come from Arab or Israeli forces. When second and third raids followed shortly afterwards, the British were ready and the entire Egyptian force was shot down, the last aircraft being baited for some time as the RAF pilots attempted to get a close look at its markings. Relations with Britain were soon restored, and the official state of war with Israel ensured that arms purchases continued. New Spitfire Mk-22s were purchased to replace the earlier models. In late 1949, Egypt received its first jet fighter, the British Gloster Meteor F-4, and shortly after de Havilland Vampire FB-5s. In 1955, Egypt made an agreement to buy heavy arms from Czechoslovakia, culminating 4 years of attempts. The Egyptian government was determined to move away from reliance on British armaments. 1951 discussions had included 60 to 100 Migo-Yan Gurevich MiG-15 fighters. Initial Soviet bloc deliveries included the MiG-15s, Ilyushin Il-28 bombers, Ilyushin Il-14 transports, and Yak-11 trainers. Instructors from Czechoslovakia accompanied these aircraft. Egypt also began manufacturing its own Czechoslovak-designed Gomhuria Bu-181 best man primary trainers at this time. The Suez Crisis. After the Egyptian government's nationalization of the Suez Canal in 1956, Egypt was attacked by Israel, France, and the United Kingdom in what came to be known as the Suez Crisis. Heavy losses were sustained by the Egyptian side. The conflict, though devastating militarily, turned out to be a political victory for Egypt, and resulted in the total withdrawal of the aggressor forces from the country. It also forced the EAF to begin rebuilding with non-British help. In 1958, Egypt merged with Syria to form the United Arab Republic, and the previously separate Egyptian and Syrian forces were combined as the United Arab Republic Air Force. Though Syria left the Union in 1961, Egypt continued to use the Union's official name until 1971, including for its Air Force. By the mid-1960s, British aircraft had been replaced completely by Soviet hardware. The Soviet Union became the principal supplier of the EAF and many other Arab states. This allowed the EAF to greatly modernize and boost its combat effectiveness. The MiG-21 Fishbed arrived in the early 1960s, bringing with it a Mach 2 capability. The MiG-21 would remain Egypt's primary fighter for the next 2 decades. In 1967, Egypt had 200 MiG-21s. The EAF also began flying the Sukhoi Su-7 fighter bomber in the mid-1960s. Egypt also began the Helwan Ha-300 as its first supersonic aircraft. It never went beyond 3 prototypes on initial test flights, then was abandoned due to high military cost inflicted upon the Egyptian military involvement in the Yemen War and the defeat in the 1967 war with Israel. The Yemen War. The Yemeni royalist side received support from Saudi Arabia and Jordan, while the Yemeni Republicans were supported by Egypt. The fighting was fierce, featuring heavy urban combat as well as battles in the countryside. Both foreign irregular and conventional forces were also involved. Strategically, the Yemen War was an opportunity for Israel. It stagnated Egyptian military plans for the reinforcement of Sinai by shifting the Egyptian military focus to another theater of operation. Egyptian historian Muhammad Haikal writes that Israel provided arms shipments and also cultivated relationships with hundreds of European mercenaries fighting for the royalists in Yemen. Israel established a covert air supply bridge from Djibouti to North Yemen. The war also gave the Israelis the opportunity to assess Egyptian combat tactics and adaptability. Egyptian air and naval forces began bombing and shelling raids in the Saudi southwestern city of Najran and the coastal town of Jizan, which were staging points for royalist forces. In response, the Saudis purchased British Thunderbird surface-to-air missiles and developed the King Khalid airfield near Karmis Mushat. Riyadh also attempted to convince the United States to respond on its behalf. In Operation Hard Surface, President Kennedy sent jet fighters and bombers to Dhahran Air Base from May 1963, demonstrating to Egypt the seriousness of his commitment to defending U.S. interests in Saudi Arabia. The Six-Day War. In the 1967 Six-Day War, the EAF's combat capacity was severely damaged after the Israeli Air Force destroyed its air bases in a preemptive strike codenamed Operation Focus. During the last 4 days, the EAF conducted only 150 sorties against Israeli units throughout the Sinai. After the war, the Soviet Union replenished EAF stocks, sending large numbers of aircraft and advisors to Egypt to revitalize the EAF. The Biafran War. During the Nigerian Civil War, Nigeria received support from Egypt, as Abdel Nasser sent Egyptians pilots. Pilots were provided to fly the aircraft procured by the Soviet Union Air Force Mikoyan MiG-17 fighters and Ilyushin Il-28 bombers. The Egyptian conscripts frequently attacked civilian rather than military targets, bombing numerous Red Cross shelters. The War of Attrition. The years between 1967 and 1970 involved a prolonged prolonged campaign of attrition against Israel. The EAF went through a massive construction program to build new air bases in order to increase its survivability. During this period, Egypt also received replacements for losses it suffered during the Six-Day War. The EAF was the first branch of the Egyptian armed forces to achieve full combat readiness. On the 15th of July 1967, 6 Israeli Mirage 3 fighters violated Egyptian airspace and orders were given for 2 formations. Each consisted of 2 MiG-21 fighters to intercept. Another formation of 2 MiGs piloted by Major Fawzi Salama and AMP Lieutenant Medhat Zaki was ready in West Cairo Air Base. Indeed, the formation took off but for protecting the airbase rather than supporting the interception. October War 1973. During the initial surprise air attack of the Yom Kippur War, over 220 EAF aircraft took part. Unlike the Syrian counterparts, EAF aircraft evaded Israeli radars by flying below detection height. EAF aircraft were held in reserve after that point, mainly concentrating on airfield defense in conjunction with the SA-3 Goa, while the more mobile SA-6 Gainful protected Egyptian forces at low and medium level, aided by the ZSU-23 4SP and shoulder-held SA-7 SAMs. Despite these limitations, the EAF conducted offensive sorties from time to time. The Su-7BM was used for quick strafe attacks on Israeli columns, and the Mirage IIE, donated by Libya, carried out long-range attacks deep inside Sinai at Bergif Gaffa. However, when Israeli armored forces used a gap between the two Egyptian armies to cross the Suez Canal, they destroyed several Egyptian SAM sites, forcing the EAF into battle against the IAF. The EAF claimed victories and continued to contest IAF operations, while also launching attacks on Israeli ground forces on the east bank of the Suez Canal. In most of these engagements, Egyptian MiG-21s challenged Israeli Mirage EICJs and Ushers. The IAF did not operate freely and did not have complete air supremacy it enjoyed during the previous conflict, the 1967 war. Egyptian MiGs were used with better efficiency than before, which included the tactics and lessons learned from the 1967 war. It was during this war that the EAF applied the lessons it earlier learned from the Israelis. A 32-year-old deputy MiG-21 regiment commander who has been flying since he was 15 recalls, during the War of Attrition, the Israeli Air Force had a favorite ambush tactic. He told Aviation Week and Space Technology. They would penetrate with 2 aircraft at medium altitude where they would be quickly picked up by radar. We would scramble 4 or 8 to attack them, but they had another dozen fighters trailing at extremely low altitude below radar coverage. As we climbed to the attack, they would zoom up behind and surprise us. My regiment lost MiGs to this ambush tactic 3 times, but we learned the lesson and practiced the same tactics. In the final fights over Deva Swap, we ambushed some Mirages the same way, and my own Finger 4 formation shot down 4 Mirages with the loss of 1 MiG. The Egyptian Air Force commanded during the war was then Air Marshal Hosni Mubarak. On the 14th of October 1973, one of many Egyptian-Israeli air engagements took place. Initial Egyptian claims were that 15 Israeli aircraft had been destroyed. Israel to this day lists no pilots killed on the 14th of October. Mubarak thereafter altered documents and even photographs from the engagement, creating the Air Battle of Mansoura. Later on, the Egyptian government changed the country's Air Force Day from the 2nd of November to the 14th of October to commemorate the Mansoura Air Battle. Mubarak was even promoted and feted as a national hero after the war, seemingly principally due to his pilots' ability to hit their target during the initial air attack. Shahbari. During the Shahbari crisis in Zaire on 1977, Egyptian Air Force provided 50 pilots and technicians, which operated Mirage jets from the Zairian Air Force. Libyan Egyptian War. During the 1977 Libyan Egyptian War, there were some skirmishes between Libyan and Egyptian fighters. In one instance, 2 Libyan Air Force MiG-23Ms engaged 2 EAF MiG-21Ms that had been upgraded to carry Western weaponry. The Libyan pilots made the mistake of trying to maneuver with the more nimble Egyptian fighters, and one MiG-23Ms was shot down by EAF Marj Sal Mohammed, while the other Libyan aircraft used its speed advantage to escape. From 1985 the EAF was involved in the joint U.S. Egyptian biannual exercise Bright Star. Sinai Insurgency. The Egyptian Air Force operated on a large scale during the Sinai Insurgency, which commenced in 2011. R-64 Apache helicopters and F-16 jet fighters bombed numerous militant targets on almost a daily basis. About 4 years ago, with Islamist forces becoming much more active against the Egyptian military in the Sinai, the Egyptian forces have taken advantage of this permission, and since then there have been dozens of strikes by the fighter planes and helicopters against terrorist targets in the area. The Egyptian Air Force has also been operating drones in the fight against the extremist organization, which counts in its ranks about 8,000 people. Considered ISIS's most efficient arm in the Middle East because of its ability to execute attacks against Egyptian military forces. Second Libyan Civil War. During the Second Libyan Civil War there were conflicting reports that Egyptian warplanes bombed Nile-based militias in support of the government based in Tobruk. The Foreign Ministry denied any involvement in the conflict, although unnamed Egyptian military officials claimed otherwise. Egypt tightens security on Libyan border following mysterious airstrikes. Egyptian forces near the Libyan border have been put on high alert following airstrikes on 2016 Yan-10 from unidentified fighter jets inside Libya. The fighter jets struck Islamic State of Iraq and Levant targets inside Libya, according to news reports. The Libyan coastal city of Sirte has served as ISIL's capital in North Africa since the terror group seized the city last summer, after receiving 3 MiG-21Ms and 3 Mi-8s from Egypt just half a year ago. It appears the Libyan Air Force is now further strengthened by 2 MiG-21Ms from the same source. The former EAF mounts are a welcome addition to the under-equipped Libyan Air Force, which is currently waging a war against Libya Dawn, Ansar al-Sharia and even the Islamic State, the latter centered around the Libyan city of Derna. On March 6, 2016, Egypt and France began on Sunday a joint military exercise termed as the Ramses 2016 in the coastal city of Alexandria along the Mediterranean. The French nuclear-powered aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle is steaming through the Red Sea on its way to the Mediterranean via the Suez Canal for joint maneuvers with the Egyptian Air Force and Navy in preparation for a reduced coalition offensive against Islamic State's deepening grip on Libya. 2015 airstrikes in Libya. The February 2015 Egyptian airstrikes in Libya against Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant positions in Libya took place on February 16, 2015, and were triggered by a video released by ISIL in Libya Arabia a day earlier, depicting the beheading of 21 Coptic Christians from Egypt. Within hours, the Egyptian Air Force responded with airstrikes against ISIL training camps and weapon stockpiles in retaliation for the killings. Warplanes, acting under orders from the Libyan government, also struck targets in Derna, reportedly in coordination with Egypt. The airstrikes had allegedly killed up to 81 ISIL militants, including 3 of the leadership, in the coastal cities of Derna and Sirte. Libyan media reported that at least 35 more Egyptians had been rounded up by ISIL in retaliation for the air raids. 2015 military intervention in Yemen. Egyptian air forces are participating in a Saudi-led joint regional military operation to halt the advance of Shia Houthi rebels in Yemen. Egypt's presidency announced on 2015 March 25 in a statement. The Egyptian Air Force participated in airstrikes against Houthis in Yemen. Egypt's military participation, through elements of the Egyptian Air and Navy forces, aims to support the Saudi-led regional coalition to restore stability in Yemen under legitimate leadership. According to the Egyptian presidency's statement, the Egyptian Air Force supported pro-government forces when they attacked Al Anad Air Base in the south of Yemen. EAF and paratroopers aerial supported Yemeni ground forces who have now ceased the military base killing scores of Houthi rebels. Structure: air bases. Source: Abu Suway Air Base, 30.57278 degrees north, 32.09639 degrees east, 30.57278, 32.09639. Al-Mansoura Air Base, 30.96750 degrees north, 31.43417 degrees east, 30.96750, 31.43417. Alexandria International Air Base, 31.18389 degrees north, 29.94722 degrees east, 31.18389, 29.94722. Aswad Air Base, 23.9650 degrees north, 32.82333 degrees east, 23.965, 32.82333. Arizona Zakazek Air Base, 30.59417 degrees north, 31.66611 degrees east, 30.59417, 31.66611. Beni Suef Air Base, 29.21194 degrees north, 31.01583 degrees east, 29.21194, 31.01583. Bilbis Air Base, 30.3950 degrees north, 31.60139 degrees east, 30.3950, 31.60139. Burma Tanta Air Base, 30.83694 degrees north, 30.93639 degrees east, 30.83694, 30.93639. Cairo Al-Marza Air Base, 30.09250 degrees north, 31.35972 degrees east, 30.09250, 31.35972. Cairo International Air Base, 30.12194 degrees north, 31.40556 degrees east, 30.12194, 31.40556. Cairo West Air Base, 30.11639 degrees north, 30.91556 degrees east, 30.11639, 30.91556. El Minya Air Base, 28.09889 degrees north, 30.72889 degrees east, 28.09889, 30.72889. Fard Air Base, 30.3344 degrees north, 32.26389 degrees east, 30.33444, 32.26389. Gebel el-Bashor Air Base, 30.5400 degrees north, 30.56056 degrees east, 30.5400, 30.56056. Hararada Air Base, 27.18417 degrees north, 33.79833 degrees east, 27.18417, 33.79833. Inches Air Base, 30.33250 degrees north, 31.44750 degrees east, 30.33250, 31.44750. Gianclis New Air Base, 30.82167 degrees north, 30.19306 degrees east, 30.82167, 30.19306. Air Marshal Air Base, 29.55417 degrees north, 30.8950 degrees east, 29.55417, 30.8950. Mersha Matru Air Base, 31.3244 degrees north, 27.22222 degrees east, 31.32444, 27.22222. Wadi al-Jandali Air Base, 30.05028 degrees north, 31.83944 degrees east, 30.05028, 31.83944. Order of Battle Silver Stars Aerobatic Team. Silver Stars is the Egyptian Air Force aerobatic display team flying 10 K-80 Karakoram jet trainer aircraft painted in white, red and black colors. All planes are equipped with white, red and blue smoke generators. During the shows, the Silver Stars performs 8 different formations along with several single aircraft passes. Aircraft number 6325 carries the name Mustafa after the team leader. Another team's planes also carried the pilots' names painted at the K-8 nose. All pilots are flying instructors at the Egyptian Air Academy based in Belbase Airport. The Egyptian Air Force demonstration team, the Silver Stars, was formed in the mid of 1974 to participate at October War anniversary. Pilots of the team were flying instructors at the Air Force College and flew 4 L-29 planes painted in dark green and brown and yellow, standard color scheme. In 1984, the Silver Stars aerobatic team switched to 6 Alpha jet training airplanes. In the following year, team's planes became 9. In 2003, the team made the switch to the K-80 Karakoram trainer and from 2005 was led by Group Captain Mustafa Fathi. Since 2010, the team is now flying 10 aircraft, 9 plus 1 solo.